Dive into the pulse of Bills football with Turf to Tape, where veteran sideline reporter Sal Capaccio and film room guru Erik Turner deliver a one-of-a-kind podcast experience, combining Sal's unparalleled access to players and coaches with Erik's razor-sharp film breakdowns. The show bridges the gap between casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. This is Turf to Tape.
This is Turf to Tape. I am Erik Turner, joined by my man Sal Capaccio from WGR. Sal, you're a busy man. I'm sure you're able to step back, take a breath, but welcome back to the show. We got a lot to cover from that blue and red scrimmage, man.
Yeah, it was a late night last night. Got back home at about 11:30. I've had much later nights inside that stadium. Or inside the older stadium, I should say. It was fun to get inside the new stadium, though. It was a great night to see everybody back watching Buffalo Bills football again. Great night to open the new stadium, Hyde Park Stadium. Really cool and a lot to get to. We talked, a week ago, and it's good timing here to kind of wrap up a lot that happened over, the last 7 days, Erik.
Yeah, we have some storylines from training camp this past week. Obviously, the blue and red scrimmage to kind of go over. But we have to start with the opening of the new stadium, Highmark Stadium. Talk about the pregame experience, the in-game experience, some of your favorite parts. Give us the lowdown on this stadium and your takeaways from that first night in the stadium.
I had been in the stadium a few times. I was there for the ribbon cutting and a few different points along the way. So, I kind of knew a lot of the things that people were going to see for the first time. For me, it was watching the reaction of people seeing it for the first time. One of the things that I really noticed immediately was when the gates opened at 5 and the band was playing, and when you're inside the old stadium, the gates open for a game and everyone kind of gets in and they rush down to the wall. They want to be down there by the players, right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to see that. We really didn't see that. What we saw was people rushed in and they couldn't wait to get to a spot to take selfies. They couldn't wait to take videos of the picture of the stadium. It was really awesome. And then they came down. They came down by the walls. And you had your own seat. If this was a PSL holder event, so either the person who held the PSL had it or maybe gave it to somebody, but people had their own seats. This was not general admission. That's what's going to happen basically coming up. I shouldn't say it's general admission, but non-PSL only event is going to happen in the next open practice on August 18th. So for me, it was kind of watching the reaction of people and seeing that. The stadium itself, I just think it's beautiful, and there's so many little things inside the stadium to see, and you can't do it in one time there.
Yeah.
If you're going to games, I would definitely kind of encourage you to walk around the stadium, see some of the other cool parts of the stadium that you might not see going one time in your regular seat.
And that's what's so interesting about the new stadium. It's not just utilitarian, right? It's not just
right.
And at the old stadium, honestly, I would walk in, I'd get my food and drinks and go right to my seat.
That's right.
Now there's more to the game day experience with this new stadium, and I loved how you went around prior to the game and highlighted some of those areas. Is there any one little area that you kind of were showing us as fans that were at home, one area that stood out for the game day experience among others?
I know that you have to have certain access, right? But the field club area is really cool because that's the area behind the bench, and that corral where the fans can stand if you have access. Now, I understand that the majority of people don't have access to that, right? But the reason why is, Erik, in the evolution of all these new stadiums, and I've gone to a lot of these stadiums in their first year, second year of existence and things like that, that's been the trend. You have these areas on the field where people can sit. I mean, heck, if you go to SoFi, there's literally suites and lounges on the field with all these chairs and people can sit in. But this is something new around the league, something that this stadium now has that kind of goes in line with, all the other stadiums in the league like that. So I think the field club, and then having the access underneath there to the food and where the players walk through the tunnel, kind of very similar to Jerry World, in Dallas, like that. That's one of them. I think the other one would be really in the end zone area where there's an overhang, but you go up, there's the charge bar, and people have an opportunity. People who have those seats have an opportunity to kind of hang out and congregate in that area and watch the game, and the circumference of the stadium and watching it as you walk around to go to see your friends. That's a very, very cool aspect for everybody.
Yeah, I saw a video. I can't remember who posted it, but even when you're up going to your, out of your seat and you're going in the concourse, you're going to get your food and everything, that you still have a pretty good view of the field as you're walking around, how there's a good view, regardless of where you're walking in the concourses there. Uh, as far as the food situation, now, yesterday, did you partake in the media food selection that is kind of, afforded to you guys in the media? Or did you, partake in some of the other food options that are now available at that stadium?
Um, we like in the media, we didn't have the press box was open, but we didn't have like the press box normal like game day.
Oh, okay.
What it was for this one was down in the what we call the media photography workroom area.
Mm,
As you know, like all these stadiums have an area for the photographers to work and the video
yeah.
people to work and TV people to work. And we had access to that and they had great food down there. And, that's changed. Like that's kind of normal for a lot of these stadiums. So that was where the food was great there. If we wanted to, get in, there was just so much, content to write and things
Yeah.
like that. So, I see somebody, I want to just highlight this. Frontier FC looks awesome, but let's get to what was told. What was reality. Touted as developed like Tottenham Hotspur, but not wide enough for soccer. No. That's that you were told that it was modeled after Tottenham Hotspur, but from the beginning they said you can play soccer matches. You can't have like international.
International, yeah.
You can have friendlies, but you can't have like a World Cup. So that was
Mhm.
definitely said from the beginning. I remember those things being said 3 years ago. Like, no, the dimensions aren't wide enough to have like a World Cup game, but
World Cup,
you
yeah.
could have friendlies. But it definitely was modeled a bit after Tottenham Hotspur, and I've been to both those stadiums, and now I mean that stadium and this one. So that was told from the beginning.
So when it comes back to now your role this year is a little different
Sure,
and where you're going to be accessing the field and what you're producing. I'm sure you're
sure,
kind of working some of those kinks out and you probably, had a little dry run yesterday. So what can we
sure.
expect as fans from your content, what you're providing to us on game days? I know yesterday was kind of just like a practice, not necessarily like a game day experience, but I'm sure you're having to get used to some of the different areas of this new stadium in your new role this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I'll be up in the press box covering the games, and I'll still be going to every game and on WGR doing pregame and talking about the games and tweeting about the game, and then post game, be in the press conferences and all of that. And as opposed to somebody who is saying in the chat box, "Yeah, I won't see many more stadiums because I got fired as sideline reporter." That's not true. I'll be at every
Yeah.
game. I'll still be flying to every game. I'll be going to every game. And sometimes things happen. There was a change in radio, and my buddy Steve Tasker is now the sideline reporter on the new place where the radio is going to be. But guess what? We're still doing
Awesome.
everything we're doing. I'm still
Yeah.
going to every game. I'll still be at every stadium and giving you all the great content you need on WGR throughout the week.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
just
That's
to
awesome.
dispel some myths from people. So what is fact and what is reality sometimes gets in the way of how people want to perceive things. But look, I mean, I'm still covering the NFL. I'll still be at WGR every single day and talking about it and going to every practice, and I'll still be at every game and doing everything on pregame and postgame like normal.
I'm excited because I feel like we're gonna be able to see or hear a little more of you to the masses, on game day experiences. For me, someone that isn't able to attend all of the games, I'm excited about that. So when it comes to the scrimmage last night, some news, some injuries. I want to get that kind of out of the way. Connor McGovern ended up getting hurt. Also, Ty Johnson. So let's start with Ty Johnson. His injury. He was grabbing at his calf. Were you able to see that live, or what have you heard from that? Any updates on either of these two?
I did not see it live, except I saw him walking off the field with head trainer Nate Bresky. He had his arm around Nate Bresky, and they were walking off the field. So later, I did see some video that was posted by some fans who were in the stands, and it looked to me like he was taking a one-on-one rep. He's going against Joe Andreessen, and initially I thought maybe did he slip? I don't think he slipped, but he definitely went down, and after a step on the
Mhm.
grass, and he went to the ground, and he was clutching at somewhere near his leg, back of leg, maybe. Let's hope we don't know if it's a knee, hamstring, something like that. We did not get an update from Joe Brady after the practice. He did speak. There were a couple different injuries, but we don't have an update on that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens now. I mean, if let's hope Ty Johnson's okay. He's not going to miss significant time. If he does miss any time, of course, Ray Davis gets elevated to
Right.
the main backup, and then you have a really interesting, fight for the number 3 spot between Frank Gore Jr. and Ian Wheeler.
Yeah, and yeah, Ty Johnson. Obviously, we know Josh Allen loves him. He always talks about him as being the best third down back in the league. He plays a huge role in pass protection. He plays a huge role in some of those, screens and those third down situations. He's a pretty important guy that sometimes kind of goes forgotten about. Connor McGovern, I'm hearing that the hamstring popped, and that's why you saw him kind of grab his leg, kind of limp off after, I think it was an interception by Benford.
Yeah.
I'm hearing there's an MRI today, and that they're expecting that it's going to be a few weeks for him. So with McGovern getting injured during the scrimmage, who kind of took his place? And if you have any updates on how the backup looked, because that actually is a good thing when you're talking about, hey, there's an injury that stinks, but seeing who's next and seeing how they perform in that semi-live situation is valuable information.
Yeah, and from what I saw, Cedric Van Pran Granger was first up. They do have Lloyd Cushenberry the third, though. From what I saw, Ced was out there now. It's possible Lloyd Cushenberry, took some reps. I didn't necessarily see that right away with the first team, but Cedric Van Pran Granger did for sure. And by that time, I can't tell you for sure, like exactly how he necessarily performed without going back and taking a look at some of the clips and things like that. But I would say it's an interesting spot for Cedric Van Pran Granger because this is a guy that kind of has been blocked at being the starting center when they brought back Connor McGovern. And, he's only into his third year. And a lot of people, including me, felt, well, could they wind up trading him by the end of training camp? Could they wind up moving on from him? I'm not really sure. Now he might step into a really more important role. So you have a couple of different options here, Erik, all right? You have Cedric Van Pran Granger.
Mm-hmm.
You have Lloyd Cushenberry III. And let's remember, you have Alec Anderson. You could move back to center if you needed him to. Now, if it was something really long-term, I think that would be more of an option. My guess is he's still fighting for that left guard spot. But let's say they felt, we really like Austin Corbett, we want him to play. You could also put Alec Anderson at center. He has done that before.
Yeah, that is nice to have when we're talking, versatility, whether it's Anderson playing. He can play across the entire offensive line. That's why he is so valuable in many ways. Played tackle in college at UCLA. So it's been interesting to watch that rotation, at the backup center position, because injuries do come up. As good as the continuity has been across the offensive line over the last few years, injuries do pop up here and there, and you got to have a plan in place. So again, the injury stinks. Doesn't sound, as of right now, prior to the MRI, that it is long-term, but it is going to be a few weeks, and you know how those hamstrings are. Hopefully, it's not one of those things that lingers as the season goes forward.
Well, I mean, I know just talking with Connor, and you know this.
Yeah.
Connor, last year he had a bit of an injury, and he, kind of was, up in the air question, through the week a couple of times, and he made it. And one thing he said to me, he goes, as long as 17's out there, I'm out there. Like, he made it clear, like, he's going to do whatever he can to make sure he's out there to protect Josh Allen. And I'm guessing, Connor's going to do everything he can to be ready for that opener, but I doubt we'll see him in the preseason at all now, Erik.
Agreed. Yeah, let him rest as long as he can. So if we're talking the overall thoughts, your thoughts on the scrimmage, on the blue and red scrimmage, what were some of your takeaways off the top? And then we'll kind of go through some of the player reports and things that stood out as the camp goes forward. But your overall thoughts on the scrimmage, the tempo, the weather, the context, the situations, what were your overall thoughts on the scrimmage?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, we call it a scrimmage, right? And I've been trying to avoid that word a little bit because scrimmage to me is you have a play clock and it's a game situation. I think they did a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It's really more of an open practice. And I was telling people when they were going there, just think about going to a practice at Fisher. You're going to see it very similarly. You go to the practice, they run it just like a practice. There's a bit of a red zone period, 7-on-7. They did 2-minute period. There was a touchdown thrown in the 2-minute. Josh hit Khalil Shakir, really nice touchdown pass, in the 2-minute period. I think, the uniforms obviously were interesting because Josh wore the new uniform. So did Tyler Bass and Tommy Doman Jr. And by the way, getting to see Tyler Bass kick now a couple of times.
Good.
That we're starting to see that a little bit. A few of the guys that kind of flashed a little bit again that we've seen now, no Max Hairston. He's missed a couple of practices now. So Davison Igbinosun got a bit of an opportunity. And I don't think Davison Igbinosun's been like super impressive necessarily, but I would say that he wasn't like he stood out in a negative way yesterday either. He's fighting with Kenai Walker right now, who we'll talk about for, one of those backup jobs at corner. And the defense, I thought, made plays. As training camp has gone on, it feels like the defense is starting to really understand a little bit more in the secondary. They're, be where they're supposed to be, how to kind of stick to everything they're supposed to. They're making plays on the football. I'm really excited to see that. And we saw that again last night.
All right, I want to start on the offensive side of the ball with Joe Brady's thoughts on the overall scrimmage here. I thought he had a really good presser after the scrimmage, and he's talking here about Josh Allen, DJ Moore, some of the situational stuff they had planned. So listen in.
I love any time that you can see the chemistry with Josh and DJ continue to take another level, right? And different type of routes and the conditions not impacting, the throws. And I loved how we finished the ones in the 2-minute drill. Clock's going to run and we got to go when the umpire blows the whistle, and just taking that from practice to a real life situation. And then Josh throwing an unbelievable play to Khalil. And we want the ball in our hands with the game on the line. I love any time that you can see the
ball in our hands with the game on the line. And I think as soon as Joe Brady took over as head coach, I think we expected the reins kind of be loosened a little bit, and for them to kind of not just completely rely on the run game and maybe air it out a little more, maybe let Josh Allen have the ball in his hands a little more in the passing game. And it kind of has felt that way. And again, take this with a grain of salt. A lot of the clips that I've seen over the last 24 hours from the scrimmage last night was Josh Allen making plays with his arm in not just the run game or his legs. And so the vertical game seems to be a factor. Obviously, DJ Moore has played a huge part in that over the last few weeks of training camp and the clips coming out of camp. But what are your thoughts on the passing game? Does it look like it's going to be more vertical?
Yes.
Was this purposeful yesterday? And what's kind of coming out and how things work and unfolded?
You know what I've said for a while now, Eric, that I've made a prediction that I think Josh's numbers are going to spike both positively and negatively this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is I just think they're going to be more aggressive. They're going to take more risks. And with that is going to come more big plays and probably some more negative plays, big plays for, negative plays against. And I think that when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, as we've talked about in the past, like, why kind of put the reins on him? Let him go be himself. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have to live with the fact that he's going to be aggressive. He's going to try and fit balls into tight windows. Sometimes that's not going to work out. There's going to be an interception or two. But at the same time, you're going to see great plays like you saw to DJ Moore. Again, last night, another highlight play to DJ Moore.
Yeah.
I think two things have stood out. And they kind of don't match when you think about them. They have been, to me, more vertical. They've also incorporated the running backs a little bit more. I think they're just trying to use the whole field as much as possible, use all of their personnel. And yes, everybody eats, but I just think that everything's on the table on every play. And they're trying to really open up as much as they can to be able to let number 17 do what he needs to do.
Yeah, from the time I was at camp and then seeing some of the stuff from last night, I do have that feeling like the Bills have been airing it out. And again, personnel, DJ Moore, has a lot to do with it. The rhythm, the timing, the spacing of the routes have looked slightly different than prior years. It looks more crisp, like the execution of the routes and spacing seem more crisp. And I see clips day in and day out from camp and even last night of Joe Brady scheming Dalton Kincaid open, scheming Shakir into the second and third levels of the field. Obviously, DJ Moore can hit all three levels. But now you're starting to see, and I saw some clips last night that I'm going to be breaking down later in a film room feature of DJ Moore winning, like you always say, at all three levels. They're using him in the flats. They're using him in the intermediate crossers. They're using him on those deep posts and big posts. But then Shakir, man, if they can really get Shakir as not just a wide receiver screen merchant, run after the catch merchant, and able to get him into the second and third levels, that's just another dimension that they really haven't consistently tapped. At times they have, but not consistently. And it's another weapon or another area of the field with a weapon they have that defenses are going to have to worry about.
Every once in a while, every few games, there's a big play downfield to Khalil Shakir.
Yeah.
Just he makes those, and you get reminded he can make those plays downfield. Sometimes it's a busted coverage, and he finds a way to kind of, Josh Allen's running around back there, and he finds a way to get open. But sometimes he gets down there, and he beats his man. He winds up finding a seam in the zone. Do you remember a few years ago that play he made? Sauce Gardner was in coverage against the Jets, I think it was.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, Josh threads that needle, and he is down there, and then he takes it to the house. Mm-hmm. Khalil Shakir has more speed, I think, that people give him credit for, but he's not going to run by you straight line. Right. It's going to be the kind of speed where He uses his IQ, his football IQ, to understand how to beat you. And, when you could put a guy like DJ Moore next to him going over the top and opening up some of those areas, I agree with you. I think that is an opportunity to get Khalil Shakir more involved in the passing game at different levels.
And here's a clip from Torrance after the scrimmage yesterday describing that big play to Shakir and how Shakir kind of goes unnoticed at times to the fan, to the average person, but not to the team itself.
It's a Khalil-esque play. Like him and Josh Allen, they see something they like on their play, we're supposed to be on a silent, but Josh just went on the cadence automatically, and like he seen what he liked, and he just went for it. And like those two got that connection, and it does go unnoticed because you got James Cook, he running the ball, and Josh can do anything with the ball. Now we got DJ Moore, but I feel like Khalil's definitely still like one of the greater parts of the team, and I feel like he can go unnoticed. But other teams might not look at it, other people, other fans, but I feel like we definitely notice like Khalil, he's still like one of the best guys on the team, core guys. And I feel like him showing up every day and it pays dividends, and it shows up like in times like that, and even in a season come around.
And so, yeah, the team, they know what they have in Shakir. And again, I think this is just that. This is one way that Joe Brady can take this offense to another level. Not just the personnel that they've added in the offseason, but guys that they've had in and building upon their repertoire and how teams have defended them in the past with these guys, the Shakirs and Kincaids, but now taking those two guys and adding and augmenting what they can do on offense. And even last night, Don Kincaid, corner route, covered very well by Damar Hamlin. Josh threaded it, and but it was down the field. It was a deep corner. It's a route that Kincaid's really good at, and it's using your tight end, your weapon, in that third level to augment the vertical passing game, the explosive passing game.
Yeah, and remember that Khalil Shakir is one of these younger players they identified just a couple years ago, and gave him a contract extension. And that contract extension now, Khalil Shakir is locked up for the next several years. There's a guy that they believe that is a not only player for them now, but in the future. And he represents a lot of what they want in everybody, and how he does everything right. And I think he is the kind of guy that also is very, very conscious about working on his game and making sure that he's kind of building upon that every single year. And that's a part of his game. I think that, you're going to see a little bit more of this year simply because Joe Brady wants to do it a little bit more. And he does have that ability. Again, he's not going to be, running down past people on the boundary. But I do think with DJ Moore opening things up and Khalil Shakir underneath, you're going to get an ability to not just get the ball in his hands for run after catch, but maybe get the ball in his hands down the field a little bit more for run after catch, not just at the line of scrimmage on those tunnel screens.
Right.
And I would still say they're probably going to throw some of those screens.
Oh, they have to.
Why wouldn't they, right?
That's built.
The difference is, Eric, I think last year when it was like 3rd and 10, they didn't have any confidence that someone could get a 3rd and 10. So they ran that play to get you to a 4th and 4. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to be the difference. Maybe this year you're running more of those on a 1st and 10. You're running those on a 2nd and 3. I think to maybe just, it's a play in the playbook, not because you have no other answers in your playbook.
And it's also a play that is kind of tagged on to a lot of their base plays where, they'll have a run called or a certain pass called in a third down situation. And if an exotic look that maybe they didn't see on film or they weren't prepared for shows up, and Josh, doesn't want to make one of those hero ball type plays, he can check to this screen to Shakir and then, put them in more of an advantageous decision or down in distance for 4th down, like you said, a 4th and 4, 4th and 3, like that. So, I do think it is built into the offense. I don't think it's going anywhere, but it'll actually get better. That play will, afford the offense to get a higher EPA in those type of plays if Shakir is also attacking at the 2nd and 3rd levels. And who knows, then you can also do those things to Moore because he's a run after catch guy with great balance.
That's right.
So you can add in the running backs in those situations. So there are other tools in the toolbox that Joe Brady and this offense can go to. But if they are pushing the ball down the field and making the defense defend not just horizontally, not just the width of the field, but the length of the field, this offense can go to a new level because it's always been about efficiency since Joe Brady has come in, and they've taken their shots and been real calculated on their vertical shots. But if they can consistently attack in that way, this offense can just go to its next level. But if we're talking, Sal, about arrows up, arrows down on the offensive side of the ball from the scrimmage, or even just training camp as a whole, is there anyone else that you'd like to throw a shout out to as having a good camp or scrimmage yesterday out at Highmark Stadium?
I think Joshua Palmer has had an excellent camp. Speaking of wide receivers, I mean, he's a guy that the Bills identified last year to really come in and win as a man-to-man guy. And it just didn't happen with the injuries. It was inconsistent. His contested catches have been really impressive in camp. And went back and looked and read some stuff on him, and that's what he was. That's what he's been in his career. Guy that can make contested catches. He has strong hands, and he holds on to the ball. And if he can stay healthy, I think that that's a real big win for the Bills. If you can have him there, then you don't have to have that expectation for Keon Coleman to rise to the level to be the number 3 receiver. And that'd be great if he could and show you all that. But if Joshua Palmer's holding him off, there's nothing he can do about that. And the fact that you can keep him in that number 4 role and still be contributing, I think that's a good situation for the Bills. And of course, Skylar Bell, he's a rookie, but we'll see where he comes. But I think Joshua Palmer has had a very good camp so far. A guy that we're going to talk about here in a little while is Kenai Walker. And I think Kenai Walker's been impressive. I think he's definitely making a case to be the 4th outside corner. I do the Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast with Matt Bove. And Bove's been saying for months and months, he's just convinced they're going to bring back Trey White. And I have not been as convinced, although I have always been wondering, what are you going to do there unless one of these guys steps up? The way I've always thought about it is, look, you're going to give every opportunity to one of these young guys to step up. And if one of them does, you don't need to go down that road. If not, then maybe you make a call. Well, guess what? Somebody's stepping up. His name is Kenai Walker.
I mean, every time I see practice film and cut-ups, whether it's from camp at Fisher or even yesterday, I saw some clips where he's just making plays on the ball. He's a bigger guy, 6'2", 204, 4.57 40. Not the best athletic profile if we're talking man-to-man coverage type guys, but his experience with Jay Valai, the coach Jay Valai, I think helps him. He obviously knows the language, the technique that Jay teaches, and some of the coverage, techniques and schemes that they're going to be running in Jim Leonard's defense. He just makes plays on the ball. I saw 2 clips of him breaking up passes in one-on-one situations yesterday, and then I saw him in a team situation break up a pass along the far boundary. He just seems to be always around the ball and competing. And yeah, if you can have an undrafted guy kind of round out your cornerback room on top of playing special teams, I mean, that's a win-win type situation. And it does, I think it helps that Jay Valai has coached this kid for a few years. And we know that a lot of coaches kind of do that, usually with veterans in the league. When a new coach comes in, they kind of bring their guys with them here and there. But it does seem like he has been just slowly, rising up the ranks and then just continuously showing up at practice, making plays.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out for the corner spot, because my guess is they're only going to keep 4 boundary corners. And then you obviously have Benford, you have Max Harrison, who didn't practice the last couple of days, Davison Egbenosin. And then I think Kenai Walker has got to be, that 4th guy right now in the mix. And then you have the nickel corners as well. And D. Alford, who I think D. Alford had an interception in the practice last night. Mm-hmm. Jordan Hancock's been mixing in there. Jalen Kilgore is more of a safety, has been playing, big nickel. There's a lot of numbers back there to start to digest a little bit. I can tell you another guy that I'm not saying he's been great, but clearly they trust him still, and he's been fine. And that is Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin right now, he was the 3rd safety on the field.
I agree. He's looked good.
Yes.
Even, again, the pass to Kincaid down the field on that corner route was completed, but Josh Allen made that play. Hamlin had him blanketed. He looks really good, surprisingly good, especially if we're talking scheme, where they're playing a little more man coverage. Right. You're seeing him matched up with tight ends, and he's actually doing pretty well.
Yeah, and he's been in a bit of a battle. For me, it's always come down to kind of him against Geno Stone.
Right.
And I think he has outperformed Geno Stone to this point. And you have a couple of guys here who are veterans, who can play special teams for you, who can kind of just understand what you want from a defensive scheme. Damar is not going to give you this high. He's not CJ Gardner-Johnson. Mm-hmm. He's not this super big athlete that's going to go make plays on the ball. But as I've always said, he has a baseline of a floor he's going to give you when he steps on the field that Most teams are going to have guys just like him who you have as a veteran, but he's even kind of been more impressive than that to me so far through, this training camp, and they're trusting him on the field. There was a dime package they went to yesterday, and he was the third safety on the field in that dime package.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear, and I can't wait to see what the Bills do with that dime package, and what linebackers in there for that, and then some of the versatility.
It was TB who was on the field for that one.
Yep.
And then they took off, the will linebacker, I guess, Dorian Williams, whoever was in that set was probably Dorian Williams, but it was Terrell Bernard was the only linebacker, and then they went 6 DBs.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that situation here in a second. I think that's very telling in that regard. So another surprise contributor has been linebacker Keontae Jenkins, undrafted free agent, 2025 from Virginia Tech. It seems like he's been steadily with that second team linebacker unit, typically with KEO, Elarms. Or what have you seen from him and his chances, honestly, making this roster? It seems like he's a pretty good fit for this Jim Leonhard defense.
Yeah, real quick, good question, Pitzer. Why wouldn't the third safety be Kilgore? He's because he's a box safety. He's a more of a nickel, big nickel. And when you go dime, you're talking more about playing more of a, I'm not going to call it a prevent, but you're playing more defensive backs to kind of make, plays on balls. You're not going against a run. Jalen Kilgore is more of a box safety against the run, matching up against tight ends. Dime is more against a spread offense. You want more athletes on the field. So that's why I would say for him. Plus, Pitzer, he's a rookie, and you don't want to put too much on his plate.
Rookie. There it is.
Right. He's fitting in a box really good right now. The more you give those guys, and the less they do, and it could be a little overwhelming. So that would be my answer. Okay. Sorry, you asked a question about
Keontae Jenkins, linebacker.
Okay, so last year, right before he got hurt, I thought he could make the team. Like I thought now there's a different defense. I get it. Different regime, Sean McDermott.
Sure.
I thought he could have made the team last year. The way that they really liked him, they were using him. Like he was right at that cut line to me. And I thought, man, is this a guy that's going to sneak on because he's going to play teams and he's a really good athlete? Keontae Jenkins is a really good athlete, and he could do a lot of things for this team from a coverage standpoint, from a blitzing standpoint. No, he's not going to be your starting linebacker for 17 games. You probably don't want that. But I think he offers value, and this is a battle right now between him and maybe Joe Andreessen, who I understand Joe is playing a different position than him.
Yeah.
I just don't know how many numbers you're going to keep at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I agree. Inside linebacker. And yes, obviously, if you play special teams like Andreessen did last year, and he's pretty good at it, that is a major plus in his regard. But Jenkins, he just seems to always be in the passing lane. He's very athletic, long. And so, yeah, if he can, pitch in on special teams, I think that's a really interesting battle because of the athleticism that he offers. And again, the hometown boy in Joe Andreessen, everyone fell in love with him last year. He was a training camp darling. And so now he's up against a guy who's actually, healthy and can really compete at those inside linebacker, those off the ball inside linebacker positions. If we move forward to the safety position, though, so you talked about Damar Hamlin and how good he's looked. I agree. I know a lot of people don't like to hear about that, but he is playing pretty well in camp thus far. But, Joe Brady was asked about Cole Bishop in his presser yesterday, and Joe basically said he's a playmaker and a core player and one of the guys we're building around this defense. What have you seen from Cole Bishop so far this summer? And then I'll play the clip from the presser from Joe Brady.
We also, just so everybody knows, Cole Bishop might have left very, very late, but a little early of practice yesterday. We don't really know exactly on that. So for some people say that he was injured. We don't know that. I don't think he took the last few reps. So we'll see if something's going on. Hopefully Cole Bishop is okay. I'm going to say this. They trust Cole to do a lot. They'll put him in every situation. When you have Cole Bishop is a better player when he's got a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson with him, and Cole can kind of move around and kind of pick his spots to kind of do everything he's supposed to do down low, up high. I don't love what I've seen sometimes from him man to man. He gets beat a little bit in those situations. It's a tough job for him. It's a tough assignment. He's there. He's close. You're also going against Josh Allen half the time and throwing the football against you. But look, I mean, that's a tough situation. I like what I've seen from Cole from being able to play at all different spots on the field, move around, and them trusting him to kind of be that guy who's really just I'm not going to call him a rover. He's not like doing his own thing, but you have a lot of options when you have a guy like Cole Bishop you can do that with.
Yeah, if you look at the Broncos defense and what they do with their safety Hufanga, like I think Cole is going to be put in a situation where he's going to have to anticipate and make a big play. And then at other times he's going to do that and he's going to miss. He's going to
That's right.
whiff, right? And so I think there's
Yeah,
going to be some
that's right.
variance to his game, but I think in the end, the entire sample of the season, you're going to see him become that playmaker like we saw flashes of last year. And I think he does have that versatility. And yes, coming out of college, he was a tight end type eraser. Like he went up against Kincaid for, that year they're together and they had a good battle. And we've seen him win some, against tight ends in man-to-man coverage. We've seen him lose some as well. But last night in one-on-ones, from a clip I saw from camp, it looked like he won. He was very physical against Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid was running an inbreaker. He got right into that inside hip, pretty much ran the route for Kincaid. And I was kind of bummed out and disappointed in Kincaid because he kind of let Bishop bully him there off the route. But he's able to, make the play on the ball, make an interception off Josh Allen and a play against Kincaid. So I do think there's going to be some variance to his game, but we'll listen in here to what Brady had to say about Bishop this summer and, kind of his progression over the last year or two.
I felt a different dude watching, last year. You watch through the season, you see him continue to progress, and he's not a third-year player. And I think he's as confident as it gets. And, having a lot of interaction with him about disguises and what this does to an offense. And I think he's an absolute playmaker. When we built our defense, guys like Cole Bishop is what we were able to build around because of their versatility.
And he talked about, him and Cole having conversations about disguises and looks and stuff like that. And that's what I've seen from Cole Bishop and the safeties overall. They're compressing prior to the snap. They're doing a lot of different looks and movements and stems, but they're compressing. All the safeties aren't just 15 yards, 20 yards down the field. They're up near the line of scrimmage. And then at the last second, you see them spinning all over the place and changing that picture, changing the coverages and rotations. And I think Cole is going to have a heavy hand in that because of his versatility.
Yeah, and defenses have changed so much over the years where, you don't have that true free safety, true strong safety. And it's not the case here anymore, but I do think that he's more of a traditional strong safety with C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the field because, as you pointed out, C.J. Gardner-Johnson's a ball hawk. Yeah. He's more of a free safety. He's going to run around and try to make plays. But I think having a guy like Cole Bishop, you don't have to just play him as a strong safety in the box. You can have him come back. You can play too high. You can play a lot of different things. And that's the evolution of defenses against a lot of these spread offenses and athletes on offense. And the Bills have athletes on defense. They have younger, faster athletes than what we've seen in the last several years. And I think that's been noticeable at camp this year.
Yeah. I mean, again, we talked about Kilgore, like his versatility and athleticism is just showing out too. It's going to be fun. The safeties, I think, are going to be in a position to make a lot more plays. They're not just going to be the quarterbacks of the defense like the Micah Hydes and the Poyers and heavily relying on the checks and audibles. The players in this scheme are going to be, put in those positions to make plays and make plays on the ball and take away the ball. And I think Cole Bishop is going to have a handful of those impact plays in those high leverage situations, this coming year. So a conversation that just won't go away, Sal. And I texted you yesterday how you felt about the linebacker situation. You mentioned Terrell Bernard earlier when the Bills were kind of executing their dime package, their dime personnel, which typically involves one off-the-ball linebacker. And that linebacker happened to be Terrell Bernard yesterday. Now, of course, they're rotating guys in and out. But every practice, we're hearing and we're seeing things about Caleb Elarms Orr and the plays he's making and how he doesn't look like a rookie and everything. He's a darling this year as far as camp goes. Is that competition actually a competition, Sal, or is it just because the injuries that Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams have been dealing with and the ramp-up period for a guy like Terrell?
Ever since Terrell Bernard has come back healthy, he has been the Mike. From what I've seen, he is the guy out there, not Caleb Elarms Orr. KEO is playing both spots and has played both spots. The Mike, the Will, what traditionally we call them. They're both inside linebackers now. Okay, just so everybody understands.
Yeah.
I think there's a competition between him and Dorian Williams. I don't think that there's a competition with him and Terrell Bernard at this point. Could that change? Certainly.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills could decide, hey, we just need to get him on the field. And maybe they really still like Dorian Williams. I would not be stunned if it's Terrell Bernard and Caleb Elam-Zor. Obviously, Dorian Williams has something to say about that. So I don't see it as a competition right now at Mike. But I think because Terrell Bernard was out and Caleb Elam-Zor got reps at the mic, he got reps calling the defense.
Yeah.
They know he can do it.
Right.
And look, Terrell Bernard, as we know, has dealt with some injuries over the years.
Yeah.
He's a smaller backer for the position he plays. He's healthy now. He says he feels very good. He's been playing all the time now. If that were to happen again, if he was to miss any time, I have no doubt that they would be very comfortable putting KEO at the mic and letting him kind of man that spot. But right now, I think this is look, you have to remember, people.
Yeah.
They signed Terrell Bernard to a contract extension last year. He's a young player they identified, they locked up. I know it's a different scheme. I think a lot of people believe this is actually a better scheme from him. It'll keep his body a little bit cleaner. The way you have another linebacker next to him. And he's been a captain, defensive captain, calling the defense. He's super smart. One thing I notice about Terrell Bernard all the time, this is really interesting. When the special teams period is going on, the kickoff and kick return units to start practice, guys are on the sidelines, are doing their thing, they're working with their position coach, whatever. Every practice, without fail, go to when you're at training camp, this would happen. Terrell Bernard is off on the track with an assistant coach looking at iPads and looking at like all this. He's just the whole time going, just him every day.
Yeah.
It happened last night again. I mean, this guy is just so deep into knowing his spot.
It's such an interesting debate. Linebacker is my favorite position to study, and obviously I've been a huge Terrell Bernard supporter over the last few years. Obviously, he played seriously injured last year.
Yes.
And when I went back and watched, because this is really, I started like buying into this KEO hype because of how well he plays and his athleticism and the size. You know, like you said, Terrell Bernard, he's 71 inches, 224 coming out of college. He's probably a little different now as far as the weight goes. If we're comparing him as a Mike in this scheme versus Vance Joseph, obviously Jim Leonard's defense last year in Denver, Alex Singleton, their Mike was 74 inches. So a 3-inch difference and 240 pounds. So yes, a bigger inside off the ball linebacker. That's pretty typical of a 3-4 scheme. Now, if you look at Justin Stranad, who was the weak side linebacker, the off the ball linebacker next to the Mike, his size was 75 inches. So he's even taller at 238. So both their linebackers that were off the ball in the inside of this defense in Denver were bigger guys. And again, what was asked of those positions is a lot different than what we typically see in what we're used to under Sean McDermott in the 4-3 and the nickel scheme. Alex Singleton was the workhorse for that defense. He played 654 coverage snaps as a Mike, Sal, versus Justin Stranad, who typically at a will position in a 4-3 defense is the Matt Milano cover guy. He only played 328 snaps, almost half of what Singleton did. So it depends on how Jim is scheming this up. Is he going to ask Mike to be a super big coverage guy, the communicator? That's obviously without saying at the Mike position. But when we're talking coverage, that Mike position has to be the cover guy. We're always used to hearing Matt Milano, the will linebacker, playing in coverage. We have to kind of change and reformat and restructure how we kind of contextualize this defense now because it's different. And so I don't know. I'm torn because I like the linebacker and the, progression that we're seeing from KEO, but I know what I have in Terrell Bernard when he's healthy. But again, you said it, Sal. If he's not healthy, this conversation is nothing. So getting him healthy and playing. Let me ask you this.
Yes. Could you see a scenario, Eric, where maybe halfway through the year, next offseason, whatever it is, it's those two, but they flip spots. It's Terrell Bernard and KEO, but they flip spots. It's KEO at the mic and Terrell Bernard at the will.
I have no problems with that. I honestly think it should be those two on the field.
Right.
So I don't care how it's configured, but I think those two should be on the field. And I just want to see, I want to see how they're scheming it up, because you know me,
Yep.
I'm an X's and O's getting junkie when it comes to the film. So I want to see how they're scheming it up, because the Broncos, they did it a certain way, but that necessarily wasn't Jim Leonard's defense. So I think those two should be on the field. I think, but as this coaching staff has shown us so far, I do think and I do believe that they are able to minimize some of the weaknesses that we'll see, if it's the size of Bernard or it's the coverage skills of Dorian Williams. If those are the two starters off the ball, I do think they'll have ways to minimize some of their deficiencies, whether it's coverage, whether it's size, whether it's stack and shedding against the run. I do think that they're good enough coaches to minimize those deficiencies.
I asked Michael Hoyt, who's really good at this stuff. I said, okay, you're very good at explaining things. Ivy League guy, right?
Yeah.
I said, you're very good at explaining things. I said, to the average person, average fan, how would you describe the difference between a 4-3 that you ran and a 3-4? Meaning, like, what will you see just in a general overview of picture on the field, not where guys are lining up, how the defense operates? And he basically gave an answer that I'll say, in this new defense, you're going to see guys making sure the ball gets pushed out to the perimeter more and chasing the ball down.
Mm-hmm.
He said that's what you're going to see a little bit more in this defense instead of, yeah, you're going to go attacking upfield. But it was really interesting. And I started thinking about Terrell Bernard here. I started thinking about KEO, because someone said in the chat, which is right, TB is small playing behind an undersized DT. That's right. Undersized DTs, that's right. But the difference is now he's going to have more time. He's going to have an ability to get down the line and get and scrape and go to balls going this way, like that. The way that Michael Hoyt described it was super interesting to me, because as much as I, have been saying you want to funnel things inside, that's right. But he said this defense is going to force an offense to kind of string things out a little bit, and then we're going to have the party get there essentially.
Yeah, when you have that 5-man surface, all right,
That's right.
5 guys on the defensive line, and you heard Jim Leonard talk about being able to dictate things, and he's going to dictate, especially if we're talking run game and protecting linebackers, he's going to dictate with his front. The Bills aren't just going to be an over front. The Bills, they basically were always, okay, Ed Oliver, you're to the tight end side, you're the outside shoulder of that 3 tech, every single play. That's how they always aligned. It was a over defense. It could be a 4-3 defense with 3 linebackers and 4 down linemen, or it was the nickel overs, but it was always an over front. Almost always an over front. This defense, they are completely different. There's going to be so many variances of how guys align up front that, yeah, some of them may be undersized, but how they're aligned is more important, because if there's 2 guys right next to each other, you can't have the combinations from an offensive line to drive an Ed Oliver off, because they can't hang on double teams because there's too many guys to their side.
Right.
So that's going to get the one-on-ones that those guys need, that may be undersized at times. But more importantly, it's going to create the chaos up front in the blocking scheme that will keep, like you said, maybe some of the undersized linebackers like Terrell Bernard at that second level free to make plays, to run around and make plays and tackles.
Yeah, and remember, Terrell Bernard in the last defense as a true Mike linebacker is more in the middle of the field, and he's got to he has a little bit less operating space to work with when he's going downhill. Yeah, he can go sideline to sideline. He could do that. But you're really asking your true will linebacker to 4-3 to do a little bit more of that. And we also know that Jim Leonard has spoken about more volume in this defense, more volume in this defense. They're going to understand and recognize how they want these guys to play. They're not just going to put them in a spot and go, well, I know that you can't, physically you're a little bit more undersized. They're going to make sure that he's in a position where he can use his athleticism to make plays. This is a super interesting spot to watch over the next few weeks in preseason.
All right, before we get you out of here, some news that came prior to the scrimmage, and that was the Bills bringing back O'Cyrus Torrence, extending him on a 4-year, $78.4 million extension, including $46 million guaranteed, an AAV of 19.6, and that's the 8th among guards in the league. So give me your thoughts on Torrence, the reason why maybe Brandon Beane in this regime decided to bring Torrence back into the fold for another few years. Yeah,
as people know, I have said for a while that I would be surprised if that had happened. When I was asked back in, January, February, well, this is Torrance's, 3rd off season. After his 3rd year, he's eligible for extension. My thought was, I don't think so. I think they'll let it play it out. It's not tackle. It's not considered a premium position necessarily. Although guards now are becoming much more expensive, as you know, that has happened, right? Yeah. So it is. So
And that's why I didn't expect it to happen.
That's the changing of thought to me. It has become more of a premium position the way you're playing them. Right. Like, how much do you want to invest in that? You could take that money and you can kind of move around and spend it elsewhere. Well, a couple thoughts here. Number one, the number one theme from the organization since they did this is we're going to keep Josh Allen as healthy as possible, as long as possible. Yeah. And we have 4 guys under contract now, multiple years: Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Connor McGovern, and Osiris Torrance, to make sure that happens. They now have 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen locked up for multi-year.
Yeah.
Not only this year, but next year. Now, left guard, we don't know how that winds up shaking out, but it was very important to them to keep an offensive line together that's going to be able to protect Josh Allen. Number 2, the most important ability is availability.
Yeah.
This guy plays. He played every single snap of his rookie year. He did not allow a sack that year. He started all but 1 game in his NFL career, and the only game he didn't start was because they rested the starters.
Yeah.
He did play in that game, I think, on field goal team, maybe, right, when he went in, or, against the New England Patriots a couple of years ago. The point is, he plays. He plays through stuff. He's tough. He's smart.
Blue collar type guy. Keeps his head down and just works.
They identified him. But the number one thing, the reason why I say, if they're going to like how this happened, when I would say nothing ever shocks me in the NFL. Nothing ever surprises me or stuns me. But I was surprised. Like, I didn't think it came out of nowhere. You know why it came out of nowhere, folks? Go look at what happened just a few days before that. Maybe a couple weeks before that, whatever it was. Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse, guard for the Atlanta Falcons, chosen about 20 picks before Osiris Torrance, signed his deal. 4 years, $96 million. Mm-hmm. That laid a foundation for the Bills and Osiris Torrance's people to say, okay, we know what that guard got in the second round of that draft.
Yeah.
So either we can do this or we can't do this. And they came in at $12 million under that for 4 years. And both sides said, hey, if that's the going rate and we like this player, then this is what it costs. And then from there, it's, do we want to pay that? And the Bills feel comfortable paying that.
Brandon Beane has told us numerous times, especially during draft season, especially during free agency, that his number one priority is protecting Josh Allen. All the questions about wide receivers and skill players and drafting this guy or bringing this type of skill player in, he always said, I need to protect Josh Allen. And so I was, though, shocked that they got this deal done because, I have a relationship with Osiris Torrance, and I never got the drift that a deal would get done. And then, like you, Sal, looking across the league and what guards are making, I feel generally that the position, when we're talking contract-wise, is inflated. But then you look across from them and what the defensive tackles are getting in some of the biggest impact players at that position on the field as a whole come at the D tackle position. And so I can see why the guard position is, and their contracts are going up and becoming more valuable, being more of a premium. And when you have a guy like Josh Allen, especially on the back end of his career, you want him protected, especially as, some of the athleticism starts to wane down a little bit and he's not going to be running around as much as often as we've seen. But again, it does come back to availability. Since 2023, among all guards, he's played 57 total games. That's number 1 overall. He's had 2,049 pass snaps. That's second overall. 1,570 run snaps, first overall. He's only allowed 7 sacks, 10 QB hits, and 121 hurries. So there are times that he does surrender pressures or hurries, and guys get around him. But again, you have Josh Allen to kind of erase some of those mistakes. But I think overall, when you're trying to protect your quarterback, especially on the back end of his career, and as athleticism winds down, you want to kind of protect the interior of the pocket, right? The centers and the guards are always the guys that kind of set the depth of the pocket. You don't want that pocket push in the face of the quarterback. Any good quarterback will tell you that's the number one way to kill an offense, or kill a rhythm of an offense and timing of an offense. And so locking in interior guys like McGovern and Torrance up the middle, I think is crucial. Now the contract, you can debate the contract. It's not my money. The Bills believe they can make things work. I believe in them, but we'll see how it goes in the future. I was lucky enough to get some info prior to the extension coming and being signed and everything like that. About
congratulations on you, Eric. Broke the news. It was great. And confirmed the next day it happened, and then it was put out there, and he didn't sign it till maybe a day and a half later.
Yeah.
But it was agreed to. And So two things about this. One comment and one question. Number
Yeah.
one, the comment is it reminded me a lot of the Connor McGovern extension, which kind of
It
came out of
did.
nowhere. Remember when McGovern said, "Yeah, there's been no talks.
Yeah.
I don't really
I
know
know.
what's happening." All of a sudden, he signed. Right.
Yeah.
That's how it happens. Again, go look what happened, folks. Matthew Bergeron signs, lays the foundation. Suddenly, Brandon Bean and Cybo's representatives go, "Okay, well, there's the template. That guy got $96 million.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how much are we gonna? All right, here, let's do it." The other thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
James Cook, leading rusher in the NFL last year. We know we've talked about mid-zone. He's so
Mhm.
good at that. How does Cybo fit with that? Like, you know what I mean? It's yes, there's the Josh Allen piece, but what about what they've done in the run game and how they run their run scheme?
Yeah, I do think you're going to see a lot of the similar stuff if we're talking concepts for the run scheme. But I want to go back to, because I didn't get to touch upon it, when you talked about involving the running backs in the passing game. And I saw a couple clips. I don't want to get too excited, but I saw a couple clips yesterday of the running backs kind of running those option routes, those Texas routes over the middle where they get lined up in the backfield or on the backside of a trips formation. So they're on the backside with a tight end and it's the running back. And you see the running back kind of release over the middle and he can go in, he can go out, he can run that rail route, which we saw KEO actually shut down James Cook on. I think that Pete Carmichael, Alvin Kamara influence is showing up early, and it's maybe the cat is not completely out of the bag, and we haven't seen the full arsenal of it. But I think that's again, if you want to take this offense to the next level, it's incorporating the screen, which we saw a running back screen yesterday. We saw some of these option routes in the scrimmage yesterday. On top of again adding in expecting Torrance to take another step because they're paying him for his ceiling. He's not there yet. But this is that time in a career of an offensive lineman, that third to fourth and fifth year, where they actually make the jump. There have been studies. I think PFF put a study out about the projection of offensive linemen, and this is that sweet spot when offensive linemen kind of take that jump. And I think that's why the Bills went out and signed and extended Osiris Torrance with this deal. Big money. Obviously, it doesn't happen all in year one, but they're expecting him to improve. They're expecting James Cook and these running backs to add in the passing game as well.
And James Cook, doing what he did last year in the run game, people ask me all the time, can he replicate that? I mean, I would take over 300 carries again like he had. I don't know if they're going to do that.
Right.
But with what you're saying and what we're seeing and going back to, and I mentioned it many times, Pete Carmichael, his influence, he was in San Diego, LaDainian Tomlinson, Alvin Kamara, Norv Turner, offensive tree. I wouldn't be surprised if James Cook has, more touches, about the same amount of touches, maybe a little bit less, but they might come in a different form, no doubt. But I think Torrance is a guy they feel comfortable with in any kind of run scheme that they're going to run.
Yeah.
And was a big part of what they did last year and how he fits into their zone run scheme.
Yeah, and real quick, as far as the run scheme goes, I do think there are some question marks there because, as we know, Aaron Kromer was the run game coordinator. Aaron Kromer called the runs and set up those runs on game days. So, again, that relationship between Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, whoever's calling or designing those runs, who's in charge of that game planning and strategizing during the week, that to me, that is a big story that no one's talking about and that we need to keep an eye on because that is, I think, where we're going to see some growing pains and maybe some of that synergy that we're not going to have because Aaron Kromer did retire. For sure. And Pat Meyer worked under Aaron Kromer here in Buffalo the first time Kromer was here, but he is now the guy in charge of the offensive line. So, a lot of the terminology will be the same, but you're right. Aaron Kromer not only was an offensive line coach, he had been an offensive coordinator, play caller. He was an interim head coach. He was very good at what he did. And I think, Pat Meyer is going to, I don't know if there's like pressure on him to live up to that kind of standard, but I think he's got big shoes to fill. He does. Big shoes to fill. Well, with that said, Sal, great episode. Let everyone know where they can find you, what you got going on week, the schedule, what's going on on Sal's schedule this week when it comes to content. Folks, I will be gone this week, not covering the Buffalo Bills. Oh, good I will be with my 12-year-old son in Cooperstown, Oneonta, New York, in an all-star village. I cannot wait. It's once in a lifetime. That's awesome. When you're 12 years old, that's what you do when you're 12 years old. And
We're going to Cooperstown.
That's sweet.
12 fields, all turf, 94 teams in a tournament.
Wow.
I got to stay in the Army barracks with a bunch of 12-year-old boys for a whole week. So we're getting out of town today. I'm driving over to Utica today with Max, staying in a hotel tonight with a couple other coaches and families and parents and kids, and then heading over to All-Star Village tomorrow. We got the skills competition tomorrow. Then games start, 2 games Tuesday, 2 games Wednesday, 2 games Thursday.
Wow.
Playoffs start Friday. Paul Hamilton's got you covered with the Buffalo Bills all week. He'll be at practice, but I can't wait. In the meantime, Sal Sports, obviously, on all social platforms. Maybe I'll be checking in on WGR every once in a while, right? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be all play. It could be a little bit of work, but cannot wait. Let's go. It's baseball. We've been waiting for this for 12 years, baby. Let's go.
That's awesome. I will say, I'm surprised. I mean, baseball's still going. We started football. We started outdoor flag football with my son. I'm coaching my son's football team.
Love it.
And yeah, we love producing content for you guys. We appreciate you guys always supporting us, but we also do love taking time away to, spend time with our families, to coach our kids, to enjoy what they have going on as they grow up. And I'm happy to hear that you're making that trip. It's a surreal experience going down there to Cooperstown, and it's a whole nother experience, taking your boy down there and him playing in a tournament, down in that area. It's a fun thing to hear. And we appreciate everyone else joining us live. Smash that like button, leave us a comment in the comment section, subscribe to both of our YouTube channels. This is airing on both YouTube channels. You guys have, supported us very well over the last couple of years, and we appreciate that. On behalf of Turf to Tape, Colin Ritchie, our producer, has been hooking us up for years now. He's doing a great job producing for us. He's been on the board and doing some stuff with Cumberland Buffalo, Odyssey. He's all over the place. Buffalo News, great intern, great producer for Turf to Tape. So on behalf of the show, I'm Erik Turner. That's Sal Capaccio. We'll see you next week.